Hi, my name is Evan. I'm president of March, Mid-Atlantic Retro Computing Hobbyists. We're a 9-year-old computer club based in New Jersey. We have members from many states around. You don't have to be in New Jersey. We have about 50 or 60 active members from all over the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic. And we specialize in antique computers from the 50s or even the 40s until the 80s. We're the same as the Antique Car Club, or chip heads instead of gearheads. This is a Cray supercomputer from the early 90s. It's the model YMP-EL. EL meant entry level, as in it's only 800 pounds. This would have been used for a university research department, a 50-person engineering department, civil engineering, academia, etc. This is a gift to us from a facility out in Pittsburgh. And it's actually the newest thing in our museum, but for a supercomputer, it's obsolete. About the same power as a Pentium 1. Okay. This is a DEC PDP-8 from 1965. DEC was Digital Equipment Corporation, which was bought by Compaq, which was bought by Hewlett-Packard. They called their computers PDPs, Programmable Data Processors. They were afraid computer would scare off people and think too much like IBM. They were the anti-IBM. This particular one, they only made 1,500 of them ever. This one is number 1158. What's special about this one is it was given when it was brand new to a high school computer club in central New Jersey. And it was worth about $20,000 in 1965 money. It was used by this club, and the teacher took the students to this computer show in Atlantic City in 1970. At the show, two amazing things happened. The adults attending the computer show looked over the kids' shoulders. How'd they do that? The kids were doing things the adults didn't know how to do. The most remarkable thing was the person around the show pulled the teacher aside, out of earshot of the kids, called in every bad word, every bad four-letter word in the book, and said, "Why the bleep bleep center would you waste a computer on children? You're an idiot," they said. "Why would you? Kids can't use computers." The teacher passed away a couple years ago in his 80s. He was eccentric. He put in his will we should have a party for him, not a funeral. We had a bash in his honor. All those high school kids, now in their 60s, came back and signed the platform. The platform is actually DEC factory equipment. One of those people actually was an advisor to the student club back in the 60s. His name was Ted Nelson, who went on to be a god of microcomputing. Ted Nelson wrote a book called Computer Liberation and Dream Machines in 1973, which inspired guys like Woz and Bill Gates. Ted Nelson is to microcomputers what Eric Clapton is to guitar rock. So we got to meet him, and there's a direct lineage from the Central New Jersey Computer Club to Ted Nelson's book to Steve Wozniak and Bill Gates. Okay. When computers first came out in the 40s and 50s, there was no such thing as RAM, of course. They had something called mercury delay lines. After that, they had something called magnetic drums, a physical rotating magnetic drums where every rotation was a clock cycle. 2 generations later, they had RAM. But in the meantime, very popular in the 60s and 70s, something called core memory. Every intersection of a wire has this little tiny metallic donut on it, and that's ferrite metal. And basically you have a giant XY grid, and the computer will write a signal to the grid and turn that bit from a 0 to a 1. So hand-wired core memory is how this worked. Okay, so this is a TV typewriter. You say, what's that, you may ask? In the early 70s, the idea that you could have your own computer in your house for personal use was starting to become feasible. And so before you got there, it wasn't just from business computer to home computer, it was a gradual process. Before we got to home computers, you could have a terminal in your house to connect to a remote mainframe somewhere else. To buy a professional terminal in 1973, 1974 was a couple $1,000s, which is like, $10,000 today. This article in Radio Electronics magazine in September '73, build your own TV typewriter, put a message on your screen. But you build your own terminal from scratch for a couple $100s. Still like $1,000 today, but it was within reach of a common engineer to do at his house. You still had to be a techie, but you could actually have it in your house. So everyone knows on Hackaday, you all know about the Homebrew Computer Club, it's legendary. But just as today, the media talk about, say, NYC Resistor, because that's where MakerBot came out of, as if it were the only hackerspace. Well, that's not true. Lots of them. Homebrew Computer Club was one of many. Homebrew formed in March '73. It's famous because of who came out of it. Well, there were lots of clubs all around the country like it. 2 months later, March 75, months later. 2 months later, in May 75, was the Amateur Computer Group in New Jersey. The exact same thing as Homebrew here in New Jersey. This particular TV typewriter was used at their actual first meeting of the first computer club in New Jersey in May 1975. It was made, the case was made out of a cardboard banker's box. It was given to us last year by the inventor, and the president of that club back in 75 is still active in the local computing scene, and he vouched for us that the story is true. This is an Apple I for all intents and purposes. It is not a replica, it's a reproduction. There's a big difference. If any of you are car guys, the Shelby Cobra, for example, a popular sports car from the 60s, a lot of companies today take a Ford Mustang, a modern brand new car, put a sports car body on it from the 60s, and that's your replica. There was a company that built an exact replica from scratch and got sued by the original inventor. That's not a replica, that's a brand new product. That's kind of what this is, but it's legal. The Apple I, all you got for your money was a circuit board and the chips in it. It was a big deal for one reason. Earlier kits, like the DIY ones such as the Altair, you had to solder the chips in all by yourself. The Apple I was pre-assembled in that they gave you a finished board. But it still wasn't enough to be a computer. You were encouraged to build your own case, get your own keyboard, use your own power supply, etc. And it wasn't like you just attach a PC power supply today and plug in the keyboard. It was still a lot of DIY work. On the internet, there's a famous picture of a beautiful wooden case on the Smithsonian website. Everyone thinks you got that. That's just what Woz built for himself. Most people just had a board and don't have to get a case. Wozniak, I should say, gave away the schematics to anyone who cared before Apple existed. As a result, in 2014 now, Apple cannot legally stop us from cloning it because it wasn't their intellectual property. What they can do is stop us from calling it an Apple I. So they call it the Mimeo I. Mimeo means copy. And one of our members, Michael Willigal, W-I-L legal, sells these boards that anyone can buy and make their own Apple I. There's also a company called Briel, B-R-I-E-L. Makes a much less expensive kit, but it's more accessible, but not as exact. This one is so real that Dan Cockey, Steve Jobs' college buddy, the first employee of Apple, came and saw it himself at our museum a few years ago, signed it, and said, honestly, if you didn't tell me it was a replica, I couldn't tell. And he personally worked on all 200 of the originals. And he said, as far as he's concerned, this isn't really a replica, it's just number 201. The Apple I is not a fantastic computer. In fact, it's no different, really, than any of these other computers of its era on the shelf unit. These are called single-board computers. The entire thing is contained in one giant circuit board. There were lots of them from lots of different companies in the mid-70s, late 70s. What made Apple special was two things. Almost universally, all of these have hexadecimal keyboards for input and just LEDs for output. Woz saw fit to have an ASCII keyboard and an RCA video out for a regular screen. Apple was not the first company to do that, but they were the first company to do that among their direct peers, and that made all the difference.